not be factored in the tariff computation by the developer. MPPMCL will offtake energy up to an annual CUF of 35% of the contracted capacity. So the contracted capacity is 440 megawatt for the project, which is divided into 2 units, each having 300 megawatt solar capacity. MPPMCL will have the flexibility to schedule up to 440 megawatt hour of peak energy during the morning peak as well as during the evening peak. The duration of morning and evening peak we have defined in the PPA. The developer, however, would not be obligated to supply any energy in excess of the contracted capacity to the procurer. However, to allow optimization of the operation of the unit, we have provided that developer should be entitled to supply this extra energy to the procurer, and the procurer would be obligated to buy the extra energy beyond the contracted capacity up to 300 megawatt at a fixed tariff. If procurer fails to procure despite being offered this energy, procurer would have to pay the SPD, the tariff, which is already defined in the PPA. If the developer does not opt to provide the procurer this extra energy, they have a right to sell it to any third party at their own cost and risk. During the morning, and this is the critical aspect, during the morning and evening peak period, developer is requested to maintain a minimum annual availability of 95%. So there are many trigger events if this availability is not being met by the developer. And some of the event would lead to finally an event of default. It is clarified that in case MPPL could not provide nighttime charging power, and I would request your attention to please pay attention to this. If MPPMCL could not provide nighttime charging power, the developer would be compensated at the applicable tariff for any shortfall in supply of power during morning peak period. In case the developer does not meet the morning peak availability for reasons that are attributable to the developer would have to pay the liquidated damages. So if there is any default on the part of the procurer in supplying the peak energy, in supplying the charging power for battery during the night time, that will be taken care of. However, if the developer doesn't meet the peak availability due to any fault of theirs, there would be LDs associated. There could be a case that the installed capacity, which is 300 megawatt of solar, may get reduced for some eventuality. If that is the case, then the contracted capacity of 220 megawatt for each unit and the peak hour availability would also be reduced in the same proportion. We also are trying to propose that the developer may source up to 5% of renewable power on an annual basis from any green market source. This approval we will try to get from the appropriate commission. However, this is something that we are in discussion with. Excuse me. Now moving on to part commissioning. In the regular solar bidding guidelines, when we are doing a plain vanilla ground mounted solar, we have a part commissioning provision of 50 megawatt part commissioning is allowed. That is the minimum capacity permissible. Here we have battery storage integrated with the solar unit. Hence, what we have suggested that the developer would be allowed to part commission 50 megawatt of solar and proportionate battery storage to meet the proportionate peak power obligations. So for example, if you have a 50 megawatt of solar unit up for part commissioning, you will have to ensure that peak power supply obligation should be 440, which is the overall contracted capacity, upon 300 into 50, which is 73 megawatt hour. Another important point is early commissioning. If the developer achieves unit COD prior to unit SCSD, the developer has to inform the procurer, and the procurer will have the first right of refusal to procure such extra energy. If the procurer opts to purchase that energy, it will be at the applicable tariff that is quoted by the bidder. If the procurer doesn't opt to purchase that extra energy, the SPD will be free to sell that extra energy to any third party. In this, we will be having 3 main agreements. RFP, which is already floated. We also have already floated the PP and ISA. Those agreements are in the draft stage, as I would say, and we are open to take suggestions for developers to further strengthen those documents. Yeah, this is the entire presentation. I would now request and encourage developers, interested bidders, to please raise their queries, and we'll try to respond to the maximum possible, else we'll take a note of it and we'll respond in a written manner.
So I would request you, if you have any issues regarding this, any suggestions. I mean, something that came to my mind myself, I can share with you. I think the early commissioning, we would make it binding for the procurer to procure, because as we speak, MPPMCL has a required for storage power. We need the power as of yesterday. So there is no reason for early commissioning, procurement of power from early commissioning being a option for the procurer. We would make it binding. So this change we would make. I was looking at the presentation, I myself realized this. Any other questions, suggestion anyone may have?
Sir, I am from NHDC, and I have few questions and one suggestion also. Actually, when we commissioned Omkareshwar 520 megawatt project, there was a provision of incentive for early commissioning. So if this can be added in this, because Ramsel has been pioneer in the best of the best tender conditions. If such condition is added, I was just looking after, then it can encourage bidders to for early commissioning. Else, the 75% of the tariff has been given for early commissioning. That clause can be reviewed. This is my suggestion. And, second is one more suggestion is there. We have observed that there is if there is a gap of over 15 days or 1 month is provided between the date of commissioning and COD, it helps in stabilizing, because in Omkareshwar floating solar we have observed that the date